Hey guys. I've been rereading Solo Leveling, so I wanted to try to make a crossover. This is what if Naruto was the Shadow Monarch. Naruto Uzumaki is not just the jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox but also the vessel of a far more ancient and terrifying power, the Shadow Monarch. When the Fourth Hokage sealed the nine tails inside baby Naruto, he unknowingly created the perfect conditions for another entity to emerge. The Shadow Monarch Ashborn, ruler of death and shadows, seeking a worthy successor, found his vessel in this child who straddled the boundaries between life and death during the sealing. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one. Let's start.
We are God.
Chapter 1. The Voice in the Darkness. The alley was dark, much too dark for midday in Konoha. 7-year-old Naruto Uzumaki pressed himself against the rough brick wall, trying to make himself smaller as the footsteps of his pursuers grew closer. His breathing came in panicked gasps that he struggled to silence. One hand clutched over his mouth. Where'd the demon brat go? A slurred voice echoed down the narrow passage. Check the alleys. Don't let him get away this time. It had started like most bad days did for Naruto, with a simple mistake. He'd accidentally bumped into a man outside a bar, causing him to spill his drink. On any other child, this would have earned perhaps a stern word. For Naruto, it had spiraled into a mob of 3 drunken chunin out for blood. The shadows around Naruto seemed to deepen, to writhe. He attributed it to fear, to the tears blurring his vision. But then he felt it, something different from the familiar burning sensation of the nine-tails chakra that sometimes flared when he was in danger. This was cool, soothing almost, like fingers of darkness caressing his trembling form. Why do you run, little one? Naruto's head snapped up, blue eyes wide as they darted around the empty alley. The voice had been clear, not from outside, but inside his mind. It wasn't the growling, hateful voice he occasionally heard in his nightmares that he now knew belonged to the fox. This voice was smooth, elegant, almost gentle in its coldness. Who's there? Naruto whispered. One who has waited long for a worthy vessel. One who can give you what you desire most. The shadows around him pulsed, deepening until they seemed almost solid. Naruto should have been terrified, but strangely, he felt calmer than he had in days. What I desire most: acknowledgement. Power. The ability to never run again. Footsteps grew closer. A bottle shattered at the alley entrance. There he is! One of the chunin pointed, face twisted with a hatred Naruto couldn't understand. Get him! Will you continue to flee? Or will you rise as something they will fear? Time seemed to slow. Naruto felt a strange calm settle over him, even as the shinobi approached with kunai drawn, an act that should have been unthinkable against a child of their own village. I don't want to run anymore, Naruto whispered. Then arise, my chosen vessel. Show them the power of shadows. Something unlocked within Naruto. The shadows around him no longer seemed separate but extensions of himself. They rippled outward like ink in water, enveloping the alley in darkness that was deeper than night. The chunin faltered, their alcohol-fueled courage wavering at the unnatural sight. What kind of jutsu is this? One hissed. It's the demon! I told you he was dangerous. Another replied, raising his kunai. Naruto stood slowly, no longer cowering. The darkness clung to him like a living cloak, wisps of shadow trailing from his fingers. His normally bright blue eyes now held an eerie purple glow. I didn't do anything wrong, Naruto said, his voice overlaid with something older, something that made the air vibrate. You shouldn't have chased me. The shadows surged forward at his unspoken command, wrapping around the legs of the nearest chunin, who shrieked as they began to climb his body like serpents. Get it off! Get it off me! The man slashed at the shadows with his kunai, but the blade passed through them harmlessly. The other 2 backed away, their faces pale with shock. This isn't what the nine tails should be able to do, one whispered. This is something else. They hurt you. They would have continued to hurt you. Extract their power, make it yours. Naruto didn't understand the words fully, but some instinct guided him. He extended his hand toward the restrained chunin, and the shadows binding the man seemed to tighten, to sink into his skin. The shinobi's screams cut off abruptly as his body went rigid. What are you doing to him? One of the others shouted, finally overcoming his shock enough to form hand signs. Before he could complete the jutsu, a tendril of shadow lashed out from Naruto, wrapping around his wrist. More followed, enveloping all 3 men until only their terrified faces were visible in cocoons of living darkness. Yes. Take what is rightfully yours. But as the shadows began to sink deeper into the men, as their faces contorted in agony, something else awoke inside Naruto. A different voice, rough, angry, but somehow less alien than the cold, elegant one. Stop this, brat. This power. It doesn't belong in this world. The Nine-Tails voice, recognizable from his dreams, cut through the calm Naruto had been feeling. The boy gasped, suddenly seeing clearly what was happening. The shadows weren't just restraining the men, they were consuming them somehow, draining something essential. No! Naruto cried out, stumbling backward. I don't want to kill anyone. The shadows hesitated, wavering between Naruto and their prey. They would not have shown you such mercy. I don't care. That's not who I am. Naruto clutched his head, tears streaming down his face. I want acknowledgement, not fear. I want to protect people, not hurt them. The darkness seemed to consider this, pulsing around him thoughtfully. Interesting. The vessel resists complete domination. Perhaps this is why you were chosen. Slowly, reluctantly, the shadows retreated from the three Chunin, who collapsed to the ground, gasping and shaking but alive. They looked at Naruto with expressions that had transformed from hatred to pure terror. Monster, one whispered, scrambling backward. They will never accept you as you are. But I can make you into something greater than they could imagine. Who are you? Naruto whispered, even as the shadows receded, flowing back into him like water down a drain. I am Ashborn, the Shadow Monarch. And you, Naruto Uzumaki, are my successor. Before Naruto could respond, a new presence appeared at the alley entrance, the third Hokage himself, flanked by ANBU operatives. His aged eyes took in the scene. 3 elite Chunin crumpled on the ground, a small boy standing amid retreating shadows, with eyes slowly fading from purple back to blue. Naruto, Hiruzen said carefully, what happened here? The shadows had fully disappeared now, leaving Naruto looking like an ordinary, frightened child again. But something had fundamentally changed. He could still feel the Shadow Monarch's presence within him, settled somewhere separate from but adjacent to the Nine-Tails seal. They chased me, Naruto said simply. And someone, protected me. Do not reveal me yet, little monarch. The time will come, but first, you must grow stronger. The Hokage's gaze sharpened. Someone protected you? Naruto hesitated, then nodded at the shadows cast by the buildings around them. The shadows did. As the ANBU moved to apprehend the disoriented Chunin, Hiruzen knelt before Naruto, placing gentle hands on his shoulders. Naruto, I need you to come with me. There's something we must discuss about what's sealed inside you. The nine-tailed fox, Naruto said, surprising the old man. I know about him. He tried to stop me just now. Hiruzen's eyes widened fractionally. Stop you? Naruto looked down at his hands, remembering the feeling of the shadows obeying his will. From doing something terrible. As the Hokage led him away from the alley, Naruto could feel both entities within him, the furious, chaotic presence of the Nine-Tails, and the cold, calculating awareness of the Shadow Monarch. Two immensely powerful beings, at odds with each other, both sealed inside a child the village despised. Rest now, little monarch. Your path to power begins today. Soon, you will raise armies from the shadows, and all who oppose you will kneel or be consumed. Don't listen to it, kid! That thing isn't from our world. It's going to consume you from the inside out. Naruto closed his eyes, overwhelmed by the voices, by the power, by the day's events. But one thought remained clear. Whatever these powers were, however terrifying they might be, they were his now. And he would find a way to use them to protect, not destroy, to become someone the village would acknowledge not out of fear, but respect. The shadows followed him as he walked beside the Hokage, stretching unnaturally long in the afternoon sun, as if eager to show that from this day forward, Naruto Uzumaki would never walk alone in the darkness again. Chapter 2, Shadows and Secrets. 3 days had passed since the incident in the alley. 3 days of interrogations disguised as concerned conversations with the Hokage. 3 days of being observed by hidden ANBU operatives whose chakra signatures Naruto could somehow sense lurking outside his apartment windows. 3 days of 2 voices arguing inside his head. Will you both just shut up? Naruto finally shouted into his empty apartment, clutching his temples. The constant bickering between the Nine-Tails and the entity calling itself the Shadow Monarch had given him a perpetual headache. The brat finally shows some backbone, the Nine-Tails growled, sounding almost approving despite its hostility. Listen to me, not that shadow parasite. Its kind doesn't belong in our world, says the construct of chakra forcibly sealed inside a child. The Shadow Monarch responded coolly. I offer the boy power without the madness you bring, Nine-Tails. I don't care about power, Naruto muttered, falling back onto his bed. I just want to understand what's happening to me. He raised his hand toward the ceiling, focusing on the shadows cast by his fingers in the late afternoon light. With just a thought, the shadows elongated, stretching across the ceiling like grasping fingers. "You are becoming what you were always meant to be," the Shadow Monarch whispered. "The vessel strong enough to inherit my throne." Naruto let the shadows retract, frowning at the ceiling. "But what exactly are you?" "The old man told me about the Nine Tails and how the Fourth Hokage sealed it inside me when I was born. But he didn't know anything about you." The darkness around the room seemed to deepen slightly, gathering near the corners as if listening. "I am Ashborn, the Shadow Monarch, ruler of the dead and sovereign of shadows. I came from a realm parallel to your own, seeking a successor worthy of my power. When the Nine Tails was sealed within you, the barrier between death and life was momentarily fractured. I saw opportunity and potential in you that I have not seen in millennia." "It's lying," the Nine Tails snarled. "It's a parasite that slipped through dimensions during the sealing. It wants to consume you and everything else in this world." Naruto sat up abruptly. "Consume me? Is that true?" The shadows pulsed once, almost like a sigh. "The fox misunderstands. I do not wish to consume you, but to transform you. To make you my successor, the new Shadow Monarch. The powers you have glimpsed are merely a fraction of what you could wield. The ability to command shadows, to extract shadow soldiers from the fallen, to build an army that answers only to you." "An army?" Naruto's eyes widened. "From the dead? From those who fall in battle, yes. Their shadows can serve you eternally, their skills and knowledge preserved in your service." Naruto shuddered, remembering how the shadows had begun to consume the Chunin in the alley. "That sounds wrong." "Finally, some sense from you, brat. Is it wrong when shinobi summon animals to fight their battles? Is it wrong when your Yamanaka clan invades mines, or your Nara clan manipulates shadows? My power is merely unfamiliar to this world, not evil in itself." Naruto stood, pacing his small apartment. "But raising the dead." "Not raising the dead," the Shadow Monarch corrected. "Extracting and preserving their shadows, the imprint of who they were. Their bodies return to dust. Only their essence serves you." The explanation didn't entirely comfort Naruto, but he couldn't deny his curiosity. "Could I see?" Without hurting anyone, the shadows in the room gathered, coalescing in the center of his apartment floor. They rose, taking humanoid shape, a figure approximately Naruto's height, featureless except for glowing purple eyes. "This is a basic shadow soldier, created from my power alone rather than extracted from a fallen warrior. Limited but loyal. With proper development of your abilities, you could create more complex soldiers with unique skills." Naruto approached the figure cautiously. It stood motionless, waiting. When he extended his hand toward it, the soldier knelt on one knee, bowing its head. "It obeys me? All shadows will obey the Shadow Monarch. This soldier is merely an extension of your will." For a moment, Naruto felt a surge of emotion, not fear, but a strange sense of connection. This creature, unlike the villagers who shunned him, or the adults who whispered behind his back, accepted him completely. "Don't be fooled by party tricks," the Nine Tails warned. "Ask it what its true purpose is." "What is your purpose?" Naruto asked the kneeling shadow. The soldier raised its featureless head, its voice a whisper like rustling leaves. "To serve the Shadow Monarch. To fight his battles. To expand his domain." Naruto frowned. "Expand his domain? What does that mean?" Before the soldier could answer, a sharp knock came at Naruto's door. The shadow soldier instantly dissolved, melting back into ordinary darkness. "Naruto?" "It's me," came the Hokage's voice. "We need to talk." Naruto hurried to the door, opening it to find the third Hokage standing there, his expression grave. Behind him stood a tall man with long white hair and red facial markings, someone Naruto had never seen before. "Old man! And who are you?" Naruto asked, looking at the stranger suspiciously. "The name's Jiraiya, kid," the white-haired man said, studying Naruto intently. "I'm here to look at your seal." Naruto's hand instinctively went to his stomach. "My seal?" The Hokage stepped inside, gesturing for Jiraiya to follow. "Naruto, Jiraiya is one of the legendary Sannin and a seal master. He was also your father's teacher." "My father's?" Naruto's eyes widened. "You knew my father?" Jiraiya's expression softened slightly. "I did. And right now, I'm concerned about what's happening with the seal he created." "Be cautious," the Shadow Monarch whispered. "They will try to suppress me." "Let them," the Nine Tails countered. "Naruto," the Hokage said gently, "I need you to tell Jiraiya everything about this shadow power you've discovered. The guards you incapacitated are still recovering. Their chakra network shows signs of partial extraction, something I've never seen before. Guilt washed over Naruto. Are they going to be okay? They'll recover, the Hokage assured him. But we need to understand what we're dealing with. Jiraiya crouched to meet Naruto's eyes. Kid, I need you to channel a little chakra so I can see the seal. Don't worry. I'm not going to hurt you or change anything without explaining first. Naruto hesitated, then nodded, lifting his shirt and focusing his chakra as he'd been taught at the academy. The black spiral seal appeared on his stomach, but as Jiraiya leaned closer to examine it, his eyes widened in shock. Sensei, look at this, he said urgently. The Hokage bent down, and both men stared at Naruto's seal with growing concern. Around the spiral design of the Nine-Tails seal, almost imperceptible unless you knew to look for it, was a second pattern, like a thin web of shadows extending outward from the original seal. What is it? Naruto asked, trying to see. There's a secondary seal formation interfacing with the four-symbol seal, Jiraiya said, his voice tense. It's unlike anything I've ever seen, not from any sealing tradition I recognize. It's almost like it grew organically from the original seal. Of course it did, the Shadow Monarch seemed almost amused. I adapted to the existing seal, creating a symbiotic relationship that benefits us both. There's something else there, Naruto blurted out, unable to keep the secret any longer. Not just the Nine-Tails. It calls itself the Shadow Monarch. Says it came through when the Nine-Tails was being sealed. The temperature in the room seemed to drop by several degrees. The Hokage and Jiraiya exchanged alarmed glances. Naruto, Jiraiya said carefully, can you communicate with this entity? Both of them, Naruto admitted. They argue a lot. The Nine-Tails hates the Shadow Monarch, says it doesn't belong in our world. And what does this Shadow Monarch want? The Hokage asked. Naruto bit his lip. It says it wants me to become its successor. To inherit its powers over shadows and the dead. Jiraiya's hand shot out, forming a seal. We need to suppress this immediately. If there's an extra-dimensional entity attempting to possess you, now, vessel! The Shadow Monarch's voice thundered in Naruto's mind. Show them you are not to be controlled. Before Naruto could react, shadows erupted from beneath him, forming a protective barrier between him and the two men. The darkness solidified, taking the shape of armored warriors that stood protectively around Naruto. I'm not possessed! Naruto shouted, trying to regain control of the shadows. Just listen to me. The Hokage had jumped back into a defensive stance, while Jiraiya's hands blurred through seals, ready to subdue what they perceived as a threat. Naruto, you need to control it, the Hokage urged. We're not your enemies. For once I agree with the humans, the Nine-Tails growled. Rein it in, brat, or you'll end up with a seal that suppresses us both, and that would leave you defenseless. The logic penetrated Naruto's panic. With effort, he concentrated on pulling the shadows back, absorbing them into himself. The shadow soldiers resisted momentarily, then dissolved, leaving only ordinary room shadows behind. I'm sorry, Naruto said, breathing hard. I didn't mean to do that. It's just, it reacted when it felt threatened. Jiraiya lowered his hands cautiously. That wasn't the Nine-Tails chakra. That was something else entirely. The shadow powers, the Hokage murmured. Naruto, what else can you do with this ability? Naruto hesitated, then decided honesty was his best option. I can control shadows, make them solid. Create soldiers from them. The Shadow Monarch says eventually I could extract shadows from people who die in battle, preserve their abilities as part of my army. The horror on both men's faces made Naruto shrink back. That sounds like a forbidden technique, similar to the impure world reincarnation, the Hokage said gravely. It's not the same. Naruto protested. It doesn't actually bring back the dead, just preserves their shadows. Even to himself, the distinction seemed thin. Jiraiya studied the seal again, his expression troubled. The integration with the original seal is too complex to safely modify without potentially releasing the Nine-Tails. We can't simply remove this secondary influence. Then what do we do? The Hokage asked. After a long moment, Jiraiya straightened. We train him. If we can't remove this Shadow Monarch's influence, we teach Naruto to control it instead. To use it on his terms, not its. A reasonable approach, the Shadow Monarch commented. The boy must learn mastery regardless. The academy won't be sufficient, the Hokage said. Not for this level of power. I'll take personal responsibility for part of his training, Jiraiya said. Between managing the Nine-Tails chakra and now this shadow power, he's going to need specialized instruction. Naruto looked between them, hope rising in his chest. You'll train me? Really? The Hokage nodded solemnly. We must. But Naruto, You must promise to be completely transparent about this power. Any new abilities, any communications from this entity, you report them immediately. I promise, Naruto said eagerly. And one more thing, Jiraiya added, his expression stern. No using these shadow abilities without supervision. Not until we understand their full implications. Understood? Naruto's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, but he nodded. Understood. As the adults continued discussing arrangements, Naruto felt the Shadow Monarch's presence stir within him. They fear what they do not understand. But in time, they will recognize the gift you have been given. Patience, little monarch. Your rise has only just begun. And despite his reservations, despite the Nine-Tails' warnings, Naruto couldn't help but feel a thrill at the potential within him, at the path that was opening before him, shadowed though it might be. Chapter 3, The Academy's Shadow. Again, Iruka-sensei called out, clipboard in hand as he observed the students practicing transformation jutsu. Naruto stepped forward, hands forming the required seal. 2 months had passed since the discovery of the Shadow Monarch within him, and every day was a careful balancing act. By day, he attended the academy, pretending to be a normal, if somewhat troublemaking, student. In the evenings, he trained alternately with the Hokage and Jiraiya, learning to control both the Nine-Tails chakra and the Shadow Monarch's abilities. Transform! Naruto called out, focusing his chakra. A puff of smoke enveloped him, and when it cleared, a perfect replica of the third Hokage stood where Naruto had been. The transformation was flawless, far better than his previous attempts that had always been slightly distorted. Iruka raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the improvement. Much better, Naruto. You've been practicing. Naruto released the jutsu with a grin. Believe it! What he didn't mention was how the Shadow Monarch had helped him understand chakra flow in ways the academy never taught. How shadows could guide energy through pathways, enhancing control. As he returned to his place in line, Naruto caught Sasuke Uchiha watching him with narrowed eyes. The last Uchiha had been paying more attention to Naruto lately, suspicious of his sudden improvements. What are you looking at? Naruto challenged, his natural competitiveness flaring. Sasuke turned away dismissively. Nothing impressive. The casual disregard stung, but Naruto forced himself to let it go. Jiraiya had been clear, drawing attention to his abilities would only create complications they weren't ready for. After class, Naruto lingered in the training yard, practicing shuriken throws while waiting for most students to leave. This was his routine now, avoiding crowds, minimizing situations where he might be provoked into using his powers reflexively. Your form has improved. Naruto spun around to find Sasuke standing behind him, arms crossed. Thanks? Naruto replied uncertainly. Sasuke approached, his dark eyes intense. You're different lately. Less loud. More focused. It wasn't a compliment, it was an accusation. He senses power recognizes power, the Shadow Monarch observed. The Uchiha bloodline has always been sensitive to darkness. Be careful around that one, the Nine-Tails added unexpectedly. His clan's eyes are dangerous to both of us. Naruto shrugged, trying to appear casual. Just trying to be a better ninja. No, Sasuke said flatly. It's more than that. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I saw you yesterday, behind the academy. The shadows moved when you walked through them. They followed you. A chill ran down Naruto's spine. He'd been careless, thinking no one was watching during his brief practice sessions. I don't know what you're talking about, Naruto lied pearly. Don't insult my intelligence, Sasuke snapped. Whatever power you're hiding, I want to know what it is. Show him, the Shadow Monarch suggested. This one could be useful. An Uchiha among your shadow soldiers would be particularly valuable. No, Naruto muttered aloud before he could stop himself. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. Who are you talking to? Naruto silently cursed his slip. Look, Sasuke, just drop it, okay? It's complicated. Is it a bloodline? Sasuke pressed. A secret technique? Whatever it is, if it makes you stronger, I need to know. The desperation beneath Sasuke's demand was unmistakable. This wasn't mere curiosity. This was the drive of someone who needed power at any cost. It's not something you can learn, Naruto said finally. And trust me, you wouldn't want it if you could. Before Sasuke could respond, a familiar presence approached, Iruka, returning to the yard to lock up the equipment shed. You boys are still here? Iruka called. It's getting late. We were just leaving, Naruto said quickly, gathering his things. Sasuke gave him one last penetrating look. This conversation isn't over, dead last. As Sasuke walked away, Naruto felt a mixture of relief and unease. The last thing he needed was the scrutiny of the class prodigy. You should not fear the Uchiha's interest, the Shadow Monarch counseled. His ambition makes him predictable. Useful. I don't want to use people, Naruto muttered under his breath. Yet you will need allies. Soldiers. An army. I'm 12, Naruto hissed. I don't need an army. For once I agree with the brat, the Ninetales rumbled. Your schemes are too transparent, Shadow Crawler, Naruto sighed, heading toward the training ground where Jiraiya had promised to meet him. The constant bickering between his two tenants never ceased, though they occasionally found common ground in their mutual distrust. When Naruto arrived at Training Ground 7, he found not just Jiraiya waiting, but the Hokage as well. Their serious expressions immediately put him on alert. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing's wrong, the Hokage assured him. But we've reached a decision about your training, Jiraiya nodded. We've spent 2 months helping you suppress and control these shadow powers. But that approach isn't working as well as we'd hoped. Naruto's stomach dropped. What do you mean? I haven't had any accidents. This wasn't entirely true. There had been minor incidents, shadows responding to his emotions in moments of stress or anger. Control through suppression has limitations, the Hokage explained gently. We're only treating symptoms, not addressing the core issue. Which is? Naruto asked. You need to learn to actively use these abilities, not just contain them, Jiraiya said. Controlled, supervised usage in a safe environment. Naruto's eyes widened. You mean, you're going to let me actually train with the shadow powers? The Hokage nodded. Under strict conditions. First, only in secured training areas with either Jiraiya or myself present. Second, full transparency about every technique you develop. And third, absolutely no shadow extraction from living beings without express permission. A reasonable compromise, the Shadow Monarch purred, satisfaction evident in its voice. Accept it. I agree to your conditions, Naruto said quickly, excitement building. Jiraiya unrolled a scroll, revealing complex seal formations. We've developed a special training ground with barrier seals that will contain any unusual chakra manifestations. We'll begin tomorrow evening, but first, the Hokage added, we need to understand more about this Shadow Monarch. Naruto, would you be willing to let it speak through you, just this once, under controlled conditions? The request caught Naruto off guard. Speak through me? Is that even possible? It is. I can temporarily direct your vocal functions while you remain conscious and in control of your body. You may end the connection at any time. Don't do it! The Ninetales snarled. Once you give it control of any part of you, it will be harder to deny it later. Naruto hesitated, weighing the warnings against his trust in the Hokage. It says it can, but the Ninetales is against it. The Hokage nodded thoughtfully. The fox's caution is noted, but we need information that only the Shadow Monarch can provide. The choice is yours, Naruto. After a moment's deliberation, Naruto nodded. I'll do it. But I want to stay aware the whole time. As you wish. What do I need to do? Naruto asked. Simply allow it, Jiraiya said, his hands ready to form seals if necessary. But maintain your awareness. If you feel anything wrong, signal us immediately. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing inward. Okay. I'm ready. Relax your control, little monarch. Allow me to share your voice. Naruto felt a strange sensation, like cool water flowing up his throat. When he opened his eyes, he found himself still fully aware, still in control of his body. But his voice when he spoke was different, deeper, more resonant, with an echo that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Greetings, shinobi of the leaf. I am Ashborn, the Shadow Monarch. The Hokage and Jiraiya tensed visibly, but maintained their composure. Why have you attached yourself to Naruto? The Hokage asked directly. I did not attach myself to him. I recognized him as my successor, the only vessel in countless millennia worthy of inheriting my throne. When the Ninetales was sealed within him, the boundaries between realms thinned. I merely reached through that opening to bestow my gift. Gift? Jiraiya scoffed. You're an invader in his body. No more than the Ninetales, though my presence is far less destructive. I offer power without madness, strength without corruption. The boy will become the greatest Shadow Monarch any realm has seen, if you do not hinder his development. And what exactly does a Shadow Monarch do? The Hokage pressed. Rules over death and shadow. Commands armies of the fallen. Maintains balance between life and afterlife. In my realm, the Shadow Monarch stands as a bulwark against greater threats, forces that would consume all existence. So you're claiming to be some kind of protector? Jiraiya asked skeptically. I am a sovereign, with all the responsibilities that entails. Your world faces threats you cannot yet comprehend, beings that would make your tailed beasts seem insignificant. The boy's unique circumstances, housing both the Nine Tails and myself, create potential for a guardian unlike any before. Naruto felt a chill at these words. The Shadow Monarch hadn't mentioned these greater threats to him before. The Hokage leaned forward. What threats do you speak of? They have many names across many worlds. Gods. Devourers. The Hollow Hunger. Suffice to say, they are drawn to concentrations of power and life force. Your world, with its tailed beasts and chakra, shines like a beacon across dimensions, and we're supposed to believe you're here to help protect us. Jiraiya's skepticism was palpable. Believe what you will. My interest is in nurturing my successor. But his interests clearly include protecting this world and its inhabitants. Our goals align, for now. That final qualification hung in the air ominously. Let me speak to Naruto again, the Hokage requested. He has been present throughout. But as you wish. Naruto felt the cool presence recede from his throat, leaving him in full control again. He swallowed hard, his mouth unexpectedly dry. Naruto? The Hokage prompted gently. I'm here, Naruto confirmed. That was weird. Did you sense any deception? Jiraiya asked. Naruto considered the question seriously. Not exactly deception. But I think it's not telling us everything. There's more to this successor thing than it's saying. The Hokage and Jiraiya exchanged glances. Nevertheless, the Hokage said finally, we proceed with the training. If these powers reside within you, better you learn to master them than be mastered by them. As they discussed the specifics of the training schedule, Naruto felt both excitement and apprehension. The path before him was unprecedented, either jinchuriki nor Shadow Sovereign, but something entirely new. They will come to understand in time, the Shadow Monarch whispered. The true power of a monarch lies not in destruction, but in protection. The shadows rise to defend what is precious to their sovereign. For once, even the Nine Tails remained thoughtfully silent. Chapter 4, Team 7's Shadow. Team 7 Naruto Uzumaki, Sakura Haruno, and Sasuke Uchiha. Your Jonin instructor will be Kakashi Hatake. Iruka's announcement sent a mixed wave of emotions through Naruto. Being on Sasuke's team was troublesome given the Uchiha's growing suspicions, but at least Sakura would be there too, even if she did seem to despise him. As the newly formed teams dispersed to wait for their instructors, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke found themselves alone in the classroom. 3 hours had passed since the other teams had left with their Jonin, and their instructor was nowhere to be seen. This is ridiculous, Sakura complained, pacing near the windows. How can he be this late? Sasuke sat silently, fingers interlaced before his face, occasionally glancing at Naruto with that same penetrating stare he'd been giving him for months. Naruto himself sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, apparently meditating, a habit he'd developed during his training with Jiraiya. In reality, he was communicating with his tenants. The silver-haired one approaches, the Shadow Monarch informed him. His life force is unusual, marked by grief and a borrowed power. He has the Sharingan, the Nine Tails added grudgingly. I can sense it. Stolen from an Uchiha. This was one of the few benefits of his situation. Advanced sensing abilities that combined the Nine Tails chakra detection with the Shadow Monarch's perception of life force and death energy. He's coming, Naruto said aloud, opening his eyes. Sakura turned to him. What? How would you know that? Before Naruto could respond, the classroom door slid open, revealing a masked Jonin with gravity-defying silver hair and a bored expression in his visible eye. Sorry I'm late, the man said casually. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around. Sakura's mouth fell open. You're 3 hours late. Kakashi's eye crinkled in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. My first impression of you, you're boring. Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes. With that, he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. As they made their way upstairs, Sasuke fell into step beside Naruto. How did you know he was coming? He asked quietly. Lucky guess, Naruto replied with an unconvincing shrug. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more as they emerged onto the roof where Kakashi waited, leaning against the railing and reading an orange book. Well, let's begin with introductions, Kakashi said without looking up from his book. Names, likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future. That sort of thing. Why don't you go first, sensei? Sakura suggested. Show us how it's done, Kakashi sighed, finally lowering his book. Me? I'm Kakashi Hatake. Things I like and things I hate. I don't feel like telling you that. My dreams for the future, never really thought about it. As for my hobbies, I have lots of hobbies. That was totally useless, Sakura muttered. All we learned was his name. Your turn, Pink, Kakashi pointed at Sakura. As Sakura launched into her introduction, mostly focused on her obvious crush on Sasuke, Naruto found himself studying Kakashi more carefully. There was something familiar about him, though Naruto was certain they never met before. He was one of your father's students, the Shadow Monarch said unexpectedly. Naruto nearly fell off the step he was sitting on. What? He blurted out. Everyone turned to look at him. Sorry, your turn I guess, Kakashi said, pointing at Naruto. The blonde. Naruto gathered himself, his mind racing with this new information. How did the Shadow Monarch know about his father and Kakashi? I'm Naruto Uzumaki, he began. I like ramen and training. I dislike the 3 minutes it takes for instant ramen to cook, and people who judge others without knowing them. He paused, considering how much to reveal. My hobbies are training and learning new techniques. My dream. He looked directly at Kakashi. My dream is to become the strongest Hokage in history, so I can protect everyone precious to me. Kakashi's visible eye widened fractionally. Something in Naruto's words or expression had caught his attention. Interesting, the Jonin murmured. Next, Broody. While Sasuke gave his introduction, focused entirely on his ambition to kill a certain someone, Naruto took the opportunity to question the Shadow Monarch. How do you know about my father? He thought internally. When I inhabit a vessel, I gain access to fragments of their bloodline memories, genetic knowledge passed down through generations. Your father's connection to this silver-haired shinobi exists in your very cells, though you were never consciously aware of it. What else do you know about my parents? Naruto pressed. Much. But some knowledge is better discovered at the proper time. Focus now on your new team. Naruto reluctantly returned his attention to Kakashi, who was explaining their real genin test scheduled for tomorrow morning. Don't eat breakfast, Kakashi advised as he prepared to leave. You'll throw up. With that cheerful warning, he disappeared in another swirl of leaves. As the 3 genin left the academy, Naruto found himself intercepted by both teammates. Naruto, wait, Sakura called, surprising him. She never voluntarily spoke to him. Sasuke simply fell into step beside him, his intention to follow Naruto obvious. What's up, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked cautiously. She fidgeted with the hem of her dress. You've changed a lot in the past year. The way you talk, the way you train, you're different. Is that a bad thing? Naruto asked. No, it's just... She glanced at Sasuke, then back to Naruto. You seem more serious now. More focused. Focused enough that we need to consider him for tomorrow's test, Sasuke interjected. Whatever Kakashi has planned, it won't be as simple as he made it sound. Naruto blinked in surprise. Was Sasuke actually acknowledging him as potentially useful? The Uchiha is pragmatic, the Shadow Monarch observed. He recognizes potential allies when facing unknown challenges. Or he wants to keep his enemies closer, the Ninetales countered. Either way, this was an opportunity Naruto hadn't expected, a chance to begin forging the team bonds he'd always wanted. I think we should plan together, Naruto suggested. Maybe even meet before the test tomorrow to prepare. He expected resistance, especially from Sasuke, but to his surprise, both teammates nodded. The training ground at 5 a.m., Sasuke said. 1 hour before the scheduled test. And ignore Kakashi's advice, eat breakfast. Agreed, Sakura said, looking determined. And bring extra supplies. Better to be over-prepared. As they parted ways, Naruto felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with either of his internal tenets. For the first time, he felt like part of something, a team. Cultivate these bonds, the Shadow Monarch advised. A monarch's greatest strength lies not in their personal power, but in the loyalty of those who serve them. They're not my servants, Naruto thought back fiercely. They're my friends. Friends, soldiers, subjects, the categories are more fluid than you imagine, young monarch. In time, you will understand. The next morning, Naruto arrived at Training Ground 7 to find Sasuke and Sakura already waiting. To his surprise, they'd brought food, onigiri and fruit, which they shared with him. So what's the plan? Naruto asked between bites. First, we need to understand the test, Sasuke said. I asked around yesterday. Every Jonin designs their own test, but they all test teamwork in some way. That makes sense, Sakura added. Why else put us in 3-man cells? Naruto nodded. So whatever Kakashi-sensei throws at us, we need to work together rather than competing. As they discussed potential strategies, Naruto felt his senses prickle. The shadows around the training ground shifted subtly, alerting him to a hidden presence. You are being observed, the Shadow Monarch confirmed. The silver-haired one watches from the trees. Naruto casually adjusted his position to face the direction of the hidden Jonin. What if Kakashi-sensei tries to turn us against each other? He asked, raising his voice slightly. We should agree now to see through any tricks. Sasuke caught Naruto's subtle glance toward the tree and understood immediately. Agreed. No matter what happens, we act as a team. Sakura, following their lead, nodded firmly. One for all, and all for one. When Kakashi finally arrived, 2 hours late, he found 3 genin sitting calmly in the clearing, apparently meditating together. Sorry I'm late, he began his excuse, but Naruto cut him off. No problem, sensei. We used the time to prepare. Kakashi's visible eyebrow rose. Prepare? Interesting approach. He held up 2 small bells. Your test is simple. Get these bells from me before noon. Whoever doesn't get a bell fails and returns to the academy. He waited for the panic and competition to set in, but instead, the 3 genin exchanged calm glances. All 3 of us against you, then? Naruto asked. But only 2 can pass, Kakashi pointed out. Sasuke stood, brushing dirt from his shorts. We'll worry about that after we get the bells. Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly. This wasn't the reaction he'd expected. Very well. Begin. The 3 genin immediately scattered into the surrounding forest. But unlike most teams who would separate entirely, Naruto could sense that Sasuke and Sakura were moving in a coordinated pattern, maintaining communication through the hand signals they'd established earlier. A direct confrontation would be unwise, the Shadow Monarch advised. This Jonin is far beyond your current abilities. I know, Naruto thought back. That's why we're not fighting fair. He reached the predetermined position, forming a shadow clone to join Sasuke while he himself circled around to support Sakura. Their plan was simple but elegant, a continuous series of distractions and feints that would hopefully wear down the Jonin while revealing his fighting style. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Kakashi had expected from fresh genin. Rather than individual attacks, he faced coordinated assaults from multiple directions. When he countered Sasuke's fire jutsu, Sakura's genjutsu would distract him. When he evaded Naruto's shadow clones, he'd find himself dodging explosive tags placed by Sasuke. An hour into the test, Kakashi found himself genuinely impressed, and slightly winded. These 3 were working together despite the deliberate competition he tried to create. The turning point came when Kakashi substituted away from a particularly clever trap, only to find himself in a clearing surrounded by shadows that seemed darker than they should be in the morning light. Interesting, he murmured, instantly alert. This wasn't a standard technique he recognized. Naruto stepped from behind a tree, his hands forming an unfamiliar seal. Shadow binding, he called out. The shadows around Kakashi surged upward, wrapping around his legs with surprising solidity. Before he could substitute away, Sasuke emerged from the opposite side of the clearing, hands flashing through signs. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu. Multiple fireballs shot toward Kakashi, who was forced to use a replacement jutsu to escape the shadow bindings. As he reappeared several yards away, Sakura dropped from above, her hands grabbing for the bells. Kakashi twisted away, but not before Sakura's fingers brushed one of the bells, causing it to jingle. Close, Kakashi acknowledged, creating distance between himself and the genin. But not good enough. It wasn't supposed to be, Naruto grinned, pointing to Kakashi's waist. The Jonin looked down to find one of the bells missing. During the confusion, a shadow clone transformed into a small snake had slithered close enough to cut the bell free. When did you? Kakashi began, genuinely surprised. Teamwork, Sasuke said simply, catching the bell as the transformed clone tossed it to him. Kakashi's surprise turned to satisfaction. Very well. 1 bell captured. But what will you do now? Only 2 can pass. Sasuke looked at the bell in his hand, then at his teammates. Without hesitation, he broke the bell in half and handed the pieces to Naruto and Sakura. We pass or fail as a team, he said firmly. Kakashi's eye widened, then crinkled into what was unmistakably a smile. Well then, I have only one thing to say to you 3. He paused dramatically. You pass. The Jonin explained the true purpose of the test, to see if they could put the team above individual success, while Naruto exchanged triumphant grins with his teammates. Clever use of the shadow binding, the Shadow Monarch commented. A basic application, but effective. The Uchiha might be arrogant, but he's not stupid, the Nine-Tails grudgingly admitted. Working with him temporarily is acceptable. As Team 7 celebrated their success, Naruto felt a new sense of possibility. For the first time, his shadow powers had been used openly, though in a limited way, and had contributed to their team's success. What none of them noticed was Kakashi's thoughtful gaze lingering on Naruto, specifically on the unusual shadow technique he'd employed, a technique that reminded the Jonin of the Nara clan's abilities, yet was fundamentally different in its execution and feel. Later that evening, Kakashi stood before the third Hokage, delivering his report on the team assignments. Team 7 passes, he concluded. They showed exceptional teamwork for Genin fresh from the academy. I'm glad to hear it, the Hokage said. Anything else noteworthy? Kakashi hesitated. Naruto used an unusual technique during the test. A shadow manipulation ability unlike the Nara clan's shadow possession. It seemed different. More tangible. The Hokage's expression remained neutral, but his eyes sharpened. Did he call it by name? Shadow binding, Kakashi confirmed. It physically restrained rather than merely mimicking movements. The Hokage sighed, setting down his pipe. I suppose it was inevitable that his abilities would begin to show during missions. Kakashi, there's something you need to know about Naruto, something beyond his status as a jinchuriki. As the Hokage explained about the Shadow Monarch, about the secondary entity sealed within Naruto alongside the Ninetales, Kakashi's visible eye grew progressively wider. So he contains two powerful entities? Kakashi finally asked. Is that even stable? Jiraiya believes the seals have achieved a sort of balance, the Hokage explained. The Ninetales chakra and the Shadow Monarch's energy counterbalance each other, preventing either from overwhelming Naruto's system. And these shadow abilities, they're safe for him to use, in moderation, the Hokage said carefully. We've been training him to use them responsibly. But Kakashi, as his Jonin instructor, you need to be vigilant. If you see signs of either influence becoming too strong, the Ninetales red chakra or shadows that move with unnatural purpose, you must intervene immediately. Kakashi nodded gravely. I understand, Lord Hokage. One more thing, the Hokage added. Naruto is not to use the most concerning of these abilities, shadow extraction, under any circumstances without direct authorization. This technique allows him to preserve the shadows of the deceased, adding them to what the entity calls his army. Kakashi's eye widened. That sounds disturbingly like a forbidden technique. Indeed, the Hokage agreed. Which is why we've forbidden its use except in the most extreme circumstances. Naruto understands this limitation. As Kakashi left the Hokage tower, his mind raced with this new information. His sensei's son carried not just the burden of the Ninetales, but this mysterious Shadow Monarch as well. The responsibility of guiding such a potentially powerful and dangerous student was daunting. But as he recalled how Naruto had worked with his teammates today, how he'd put their success above his own, Kakashi felt a glimmer of hope. Whatever powers dwelled within Naruto, the boy's heart remained his own, and that heart seemed firmly set on protecting rather than dominating. Time would tell if that balance could be maintained as the Shadow Monarch's influence grew. Chapter 5, Shadows in the Mist. The mission to the Land of Waves began like any other C rank, an escort assignment that should have been routine. But from the moment they were attacked by the Demon Brothers, Naruto knew this mission had escalated far beyond their expected parameters. Now, trapped in Zabuza Momochi's water prison with Kakashi, watching Sasuke and Sakura desperately fending off water clones, Naruto felt a familiar darkness stirring within him. This is the moment, young monarch, the Shadow Monarch whispered urgently. Use my power. Save your comrades. Don't be reckless, brat, the Ninetales countered. Your shadow tricks will expose too much too soon. Naruto gritted his teeth, weighing his options as he struggled against the water prison. Through the spherical prison, he could see Sasuke thrown violently to the ground by one of Zabuza's water clones, while Sakura stood protectively over Tazuna, kunai raised but shaking with fear. Naruto, Kakashi managed through the water, take Sasuke and Sakura and run. This opponent is beyond your level, but running meant abandoning Kakashi to certain death. Unacceptable. I don't abandon my comrades, Naruto declared, locking eyes with his imprisoned teacher. Then, making his decision, Naruto stopped struggling against the water prison and instead went completely still, closing his eyes. What are you doing? Kakashi demanded. This isn't the time for meditation. Naruto didn't respond. Inside his mindscape, he stood before the Shadow Monarch, not the formless voice he usually communicated with, but the imposing armored figure he'd come to visualize during their more intense training sessions. I need your power, Naruto said directly. But on my terms. The towering figure, shrouded in darkness with only piercing purple eyes visible through his helm, inclined his head slightly. Name your terms, young successor. No shadow extraction unless absolutely necessary. No full possession. Just enough power to free us and subdue Zabuza without killing him. The monarch seemed to consider this for a moment. Acceptable. But remember, restraint has its limits in true battle. Back in the physical world, Naruto's eyes snapped open, now glowing with a subtle purple light. The water around him within the prison began to darken, as if ink were spreading through it. Zabuza noticed the change immediately. What the hell? He muttered, focusing on the darkening water prison. Naruto, what are you doing? Kakashi asked urgently, recognizing the signs of the Shadow Monarch's influence. Instead of answering, Naruto raised his hands within the prison. Shadow Domain, he whispered, a technique he'd been developing with Jiraiya but had never used in actual combat. The darkness spread rapidly through the water prison, then burst outward in all directions, enveloping the entire battlefield in a dome of twilight. Inside this domain, shadows deepened, gaining substance and weight. Zabuza's water prison destabilized as the shadows infiltrated it, allowing Kakashi and Naruto to break free. The missing Nin leapt backward, hands already forming seals for his next jutsu. Water style, Water Dragon, Zabuza began, but stopped abruptly as shadows wrapped around his hands, preventing the completion of his hand signs. What is this technique? Zabuza demanded, struggling against the shadow bindings. This isn't Nara clan jutsu. Naruto stood at the center of the shadow domain, his expression unnaturally calm. When he spoke, his voice carried a subtle echo. This is the domain where I hold authority, Zabuza Momochi. Kakashi moved to Naruto's side, wary but allowing the genin to maintain his technique while he assessed the situation. Within the shadow domain, Kakashi noticed his own senses seemed heightened, while Zabuza appeared to be struggling not just against the shadow bindings but with his very perceptions. Sasuke, Sakura, are you alright? Naruto called, not taking his eyes off Zabuza. We're fine, Sasuke responded, moving closer with obvious fascination at the shadow technique. What is this jutsu? Explanations later, Kakashi interrupted, forming hand seals. Naruto, can you hold him for 30 more seconds? Naruto nodded, sweat beginning to form on his brow from the effort of maintaining the domain. This was far beyond what he'd practiced in training, covering this large an area and actively restraining someone of Zabuza's caliber simultaneously. Before Kakashi could complete his jutsu, however, Saban needles flew through the shadow domain, striking Zabuza in the neck with pinpoint precision. The missing Nin collapsed, the shadow bindings dissipating as he fell. A masked figure appeared on a nearby tree branch. Thank you for your assistance. I've been tracking Zabuza for weeks. A hunter Nin from the hidden mist, Kakashi identified, his stance relaxing slightly. As the hunter Nin collected Zabuza's body, Naruto felt a strange sensation, a pull toward the fallen swordsman that he never experienced before. His shadow calls to you, the Shadow Monarch explained. A warrior of his caliber would make a powerful addition to your army. No, Naruto thought firmly. He's not dead. Those Saban put him in a temporary death state. I can sense it. The Shadow Monarch seemed impressed. Your perception grows sharper. Yes, the swordsman lives, and that masked one is no hunter Nin, but an accomplice. Naruto turned to Kakashi, intending to share this insight, but found his teacher swaying on his feet, chakra depleted from the battle and his extended use of the Sharingan. Kakashi-sensei! Sakura cried as the Jonin collapsed. The shadow domain faded as Naruto's concentration broke, returning the forest to normal lighting. As the team gathered around their fallen teacher, Naruto glanced in the direction the fake hunter Nin had disappeared with Zabuza's body. We'll meet again, he murmured, certain that this battle was far from over. Later, at Tazuna's house, with Kakashi resting from chakra exhaustion, Naruto found himself cornered by his teammates in the small guest room they'd been assigned. You're going to explain that shadow technique now, Sasuke stated, blocking the doorway. It wasn't a request. Sakura nodded, her expression torn between fear and fascination. That wasn't any jutsu they taught at the academy. And your eyes changed color, Naruto sighed, sitting cross-legged on his futon. He'd known this moment would come eventually. After months of training with the Shadow Monarch's powers, using them in a real battle had made concealment impossible. It's complicated, he began. And classified. I'm not supposed to talk about it without the Hokage's permission. We're your team, Sasuke countered. If you have abilities that affect missions, we need to know. Naruto looked between them, weighing his options. The Shadow Monarch had been encouraging him to be more open with his teammates, arguing that sharing some truth would build the trust necessary for true allegiance. The Ninetales, surprisingly, didn't disagree, though its motive centered more on practical survival. All right, Naruto decided. But this doesn't leave the team. For the next hour, Naruto explained, not everything, but enough. He told them about being the Ninetales Jinchuriki, which Sasuke had already suspected. He explained about the Shadow Monarch, a separate entity that had somehow attached to him during the sealing process. He described the abilities he'd been learning to control: shadow manipulation, domain creation, enhanced perception. What he didn't mention was shadow extraction or the concept of a shadow army. Some truths were still too disturbing, too easy to misinterpret. When he finished, Sasuke and Sakura sat in stunned silence. So you have two beings sealed inside you? Sakura finally asked, her voice small. Naruto nodded. The Nine Tails was sealed by the Fourth Hokage. The Shadow Monarch came later, through the seal somehow. And they talked to you? Sasuke pressed, his expression unreadable. All the time, Naruto confirmed. The fox is mostly angry and insulting. The Shadow Monarch is calmer, but has its own agenda. Which is? Naruto hesitated. It says it wants me to become its successor, to inherit its powers fully. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. And what would that make you, exactly? I don't know, Naruto admitted honestly. Something more than human, I think. But I don't plan to find out anytime soon. I'm learning to use these abilities on my terms, not theirs. To Naruto's surprise, Sakura moved closer, placing a tentative hand on his shoulder. That sounds like a terrible burden, Naruto. Why didn't you tell us sooner? The simple gesture of comfort nearly undid him. After years of isolation, of keeping these secrets, the acceptance in her touch was overwhelming. I was afraid, he admitted, voice cracking slightly. Afraid you'd see me as a monster, like the villagers do. That's stupid, Sasuke said bluntly. We've trained together, fought together. Whatever's sealed inside you, you're still the same annoying, determined Naruto. Coming from Sasuke, this was practically a declaration of brotherhood. Sakura nodded firmly. We're Team 7. We stick together, no matter what. Naruto felt something warm expand in his chest, something that had nothing to do with the entities sealed within him and everything to do with the bonds forming with his teammates. See how loyalty grows. The Shadow Monarch observed approvingly. This is the beginning of your true power, young monarch. Not merely the abilities I grant you, but the devotion of those who follow you. For once, Naruto didn't argue with the entity's perspective. The support of his teammates felt stronger and more real than any shadow technique. The week of recovery passed quickly, with Kakashi supervising their tree-climbing training once he was mobile again. The Jonin took Naruto aside only once, to discuss his use of the Shadow Monarch's powers. The Shadow Domain was impressive, Kakashi acknowledged, but dangerous to use in battle before you've fully mastered it. The Hokage informed me of your special training, but I need your word that you won't use those abilities recklessly. I understand, Sensei, Naruto agreed. I only used it because I couldn't see another way to free you from the water prison. Kakashi's visible eye softened. Your intent was commendable. Just be careful. Power like that always comes with a price. The night before their anticipated rematch with Zabuza, Naruto sat alone on Tazuna's roof, gazing at the stars. The Shadow Monarch had been unusually quiet since the battle, as if evaluating Naruto's performance and calculating adjustments. The Shadow Crawler is planning something, the Nine Tails rumbled, breaking its own silence. It sees opportunity in the coming battle. What kind of opportunity? Naruto asked mentally. The masked one who took Zabuza. There's something unusual about that one's chakra. The Shadow Crawler desires it for your collection. Naruto frowned. I've already decided not to use shadow extraction unless absolutely necessary. Circumstances have a way of becoming necessary in battle, the fox replied cynically. Just be aware, brat. The Shadow Crawler plays a longer game than you realize. With this ominous warning in mind, Naruto rejoined his team to prepare for whatever the next day would bring. The battle at the bridge unfolded even more chaotically than anticipated. While Kakashi engaged Zabuza in combat, Naruto and Sasuke found themselves trapped within Haku's crystal ice mirrors, a bloodline technique that proved nearly impossible to counter. Saban rained down on them from every direction as Haku moved between mirrors faster than they could track. Sasuke's awakening Sharingan provided some advantage, but not enough to escape the deadly dome. As another volley of Saban pierced his body, Naruto fell to one knee, blood dripping from multiple wounds. You need not suffer this way, the Shadow Monarch urged. My domain would neutralize the advantage of these ice mirrors. Naruto glanced at Sasuke, who was similarly wounded but still standing, his newly awakened Sharingan scanning desperately for an opening. Sasuke, Naruto called. I'm going to try something. When I give the signal, hit the weakest mirror with your strongest fire technique. Sasuke nodded grimly, trusting his teammate despite not knowing the plan. Naruto closed his eyes, centering himself as Jiraiya had taught him. Shadow Domain, he whispered, focusing his chakra. The familiar darkness spread outward, enveloping the entire ice mirror structure. Unlike natural shadows, this darkness seemed alive, pulsing with purpose. Inside the domain, Haku's movements became visible to Naruto, not as physical motion, but as disturbances in the shadow field. Every shift from mirror to mirror left a trace, a ripple in the darkness that Naruto could sense. There! Naruto shouted, pointing to a mirror on their left. Now, Sasuke! Without hesitation, Sasuke's hands flashed through seals. Fire style, Great Fireball Jutsu. The massive fireball, enhanced by the properties of the shadow domain that responded to Naruto's allies, struck the ice mirror at its thinnest point. The mirror cracked, then shattered, creating an opening in the dome. Go! Naruto urged Sasuke. Help Kakashi-sensei. I'll handle Haku. Sasuke hesitated for a split second, then nodded, darting through the opening toward the sounds of Kakashi and Zabuza's battle. Alone within the ice mirror prison, Naruto turned slowly, tracking Haku's movements through the shadows. You're interesting, Haku's voice echoed from the mirrors. That darkness technique. It's not a bloodline limit I recognize. It's unique, Naruto confirmed, his eyes glowing faintly purple in the dim light of the domain. Just like your ice mirrors. Haku appeared in the mirror directly in front of Naruto, masked face studying him curiously. You're like me, aren't you? Someone with power others fear. The observation struck Naruto deeply. There was recognition in Haku's voice, the recognition of one outcast for another. I am, Naruto acknowledged. But I use my power to protect my precious people, not to serve someone else's ambition. Zabuza-san gave me purpose when I had none, Haku replied softly. For that I would give my life. Such devotion, the Shadow Monarch murmured appreciatively. Imagine this one in your service, young monarch. A worthy first lieutenant. Naruto pushed the thought aside, focusing on the battle. I don't want to hurt you, Haku. But I won't let you harm my friends either. Then we are at an impasse, Haku said, raising Senbon between his fingers. Because I cannot fail Zabuza-san. What followed was unlike any battle Naruto had experienced. Within the shadow domain, he could sense Haku's movements, but the ice user's speed still made him nearly impossible to counter. For every Senbon Naruto dodged, two more found their mark. For every shadow binding Naruto attempted, Haku found a way to slip free. The battle shifted when Naruto heard Sakura's scream from beyond the ice dome. The distraction cost him, allowing Haku to land a particularly vicious volley of Senbon that drove Naruto to the ground. As he struggled to rise, bleeding from dozens of punctures, Naruto felt both his tenets surging within him, the Nine Tails' hot, angry chakra and the Shadow Monarch's cold, calculating power. Enough restraint, the Shadow Monarch urged. Show him the true extent of our power. For once, Naruto didn't resist. Drawing on both sources simultaneously, he rose to his feet as red chakra and black shadows swirled around him. The Senbon embedded in his body were pushed out as his wounds healed, and the shadow domain darkened further, taking on an almost solid quality. Haku paused in his assault, clearly sensing the dangerous shift in his opponent. This power, what are you? Someone who's tired of holding back, Naruto replied, his voice overlaid with both the Nine Tails growl and the Shadow Monarch's resonant tones. With speed that matched Haku's own, Naruto struck the nearest ice mirror with a shadow-wrapped fist. The mirror cracked deeply, surprising both combatants with the effectiveness of the blow. Haku immediately began moving between mirrors, launching Senbon from multiple angles. But within the enhanced shadow domain, Naruto could now track and counter each attack, shadows rising to intercept the needles before they could reach him. The tide turned decisively when Naruto stopped trying to attack the mirrors themselves and instead focused on the shadows between them. As Haku moved from one mirror to another, Naruto thrust his hand forward. Shadow grasp. The darkness between the mirrors solidified, catching Haku mid-transit. The ice user's momentum carried him forward, but the shadow hold yanked him from his intended path, sending him crashing to the bridge floor outside his mirrors. Naruto was on him instantly, dispelling the shadow domain as he pinned Haku to the ground. The masked ninja's arm twisted behind his back. Yield, Naruto demanded, carefully controlling the mixture of Nine Tails chakra and shadow power coursing through him.